Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gems of Life show. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. My name is Fadhwa, and as always, we always have something interesting and we pick on the gems of our lives, things that we have learned, the lessons that we have picked up through our lives. But in those challenges and how we deal with these challenges, there's always something that follows us, just like a shadow, always with us. There's that inner warrior, and that's something that also holds you back within us. I am talking to you about our inner child. You may not know this. Our inner child controls us. Our inner child is in the driver's seat of our life. So, what can you do to take control of that? What can you do to bridge that gap between you and that inner child in you? Because believe me, that inner child can work against you or for you. And who better to talk about this than my favorite co-host actually now. Jules, you've been here with me so much so that you are like my co-host now. Welcome, Jules, to the show.
Hi, Fadwa. Thank you so much. That's a great privilege to think of myself as a co-host. I love co-piloting with you. I imagine us in a little car, like driving beside each other and taking
Yes,
turns at the wheel.
yes, absolutely. We are co-drivers, co
Yes.
yes, of our life. How
And
you doing?
this,
Mhm.
I'm doing well today. Yeah, things are apart from some technical difficulties, right? Going, whoa,
Right?
everything has been okay. And
Yes.
sometimes you just go, wow, like why is this not working? Okay. Sometimes you're meant to let go of it. And sometimes you're just meant to push on. And today we just pushed on and it worked out. And so I'm happy to be here. And some days are like that in general, right? Where you just go, wow, why am I meeting all of this resistance? Ooh, am I meant to just give up, or am I meant to just kind of surrender to it and roll with it and try again? And that's been the day so far.
And that's quite true, actually. We are always met with resistance. And this morning, when we were in the process of recording this, I think it took us over half an hour just to go over one thing after another. And this is the tech now, right? We are in the process where everything is online. And especially when you're recording your videos and you're doing your YouTube or social media, you're going to have resistance. You're going to get into technical difficulties. It's how you go through it and how you go through that challenge, because it just shows you that we have the ability to adapt and learn, and it's in the process that we actually went through it, and we had to be patient and have fun, and just have fun with it and go with it, instead of being frustrated and getting angry. I think it's that inner child in us that says just push through, push through. It's not that inner angry child in us that came out today.
It had its moments, don't get me wrong. But it's like you said, it's the power of our inner child. There was a 3-year-old in me that was just not getting what they wanted and was having a little bit of a temper tantrum. Why isn't this working? Right? But the other part that it's like, oh, I understand that things just don't work all the time the way that we think they're going to. And the word you used is patience. How hard is it to be patient all the time, but to have little glimpses of it? And it's a perfect example of our inner child, that like frustrated 3-year-old that just is having a temper tantrum because they are not getting what they want, but us being with them and saying, I understand you're not getting what you want right now. And that is so frustrating. And I understand that you're angry. And if you need to like stomp it out for a little bit longer, go for it. But know that I'm here patiently present with you. And we're gonna move forward on this. This is the way it goes. And that is that is the power of being able to have a relationship with your inner child, because those programs, like you said, Fadwa, are at work below the surface all the time.
Yeah.
When I'm describing them to I used to be to kids. Kids don't get this analogy anymore, but I used to say they're like CDs playing in the background, and now you'd have to say songs, right? Because a kid doesn't know the CD. What the heck is that? That's old school. But it's like there's a song playing in the background, and we don't even know it's playing because it's just below the surface all the time. But when it starts playing really loud, we go, that must be who we are. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. When really you've just kind of initiated that reaction in that inner child, in that kid that's going, I'm not getting my way. And by bringing your attention and going, oh, that's just the song that plays. That's not who I am. Oh, yeah, that song. Remember, that song is important, but there's lots of other songs here as well. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're doing when we're reconnecting and creating new relationships and nurturing those relationships with the versions of ourselves on the inside that just tend to go into certain frames and just get frozen there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that, frozen in there. We get frozen in time at a particular time in our life, in our childhood. You know,
Definitely. And I'm glad you said that too, because I often say, when you have a vacuum sealed, like Ziploc bag to put in the freezer,
mhm,
I often say our memories kind of get caught and like freeze dried and stored. And then they're accessed, but they're never actually like nobody actually opens the bag and all the air comes in until you bring your attention to it. And that's the magic of it. Then it's not frozen anymore. Then you can access it whenever you want. And it's not just a story playing in the background that just feels really important to listen to. It's the freezing part.
yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, Jules. I'm putting you on a spot today, like you always do. When when did you discover that inner child in you is there? That inner child in you is driving you. That inner child is in you is the one that challenging you, is either holding you back or pushing you forward. When did you get to connect to that part of you?
Uh, I'm sure you won't be surprised by this, but the first memory that comes up is when I had kids. It's amazing how a child on the outside can reflect your own child on the inside. I could regulate my own emotions. I was able to, as an adult, uh, control, because we love to control. I
Mhm.
was able to control my environment and the situation until I had kids. And as soon as your child is screaming and you have no idea how to satiate what it is that they need, you have no clue what
Mhm.
to do, and you can tell that they're in distress and they're uncomfortable or upset or hurting somehow, that's when you go into this mode where you go, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. I have no control. And that's when responses came up from like deep bubbling up from deep below the surface, where I was like, where is this response coming from? Like I just want to leave this baby in this room and close the door and just leave the house and maintain sanity. Like what the heck is going on here, right?
Mhm.
Or cry uncontrollably because I can't control this.
Mhm.
And it was at those points, in those early moments of having both my kids, I'd love to say after one, I knew what was going on, but that was not the case, where I realized, like, wow, my instant reaction is just to scream and get upset with them.
Mhm.
And that's when I actually brought my own curiosity back towards myself to go, wow, like, where does that come from? I feel like a kid who's not getting my own way.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's exactly what's happening. The kid that isn't getting their own way inside of me is coming up towards my kid. Whoa. And then I started doing more work with people that I work with in relationship to all those times that comes up with them. And in all honesty, of all of the most powerful tools that I've ever played with repeatedly when it comes to connecting to people's resistances in their bodies and within their beings, it is this inner child work. It's so powerful.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. It's good, at least you're connected. It shows that you're very attuned to who you are, very attuned to your presence, and very attuned to what's actually having that awareness and knowing what's happening. Most of us, we just we just go through it. I never
React.
I never discovered that part in me. I never discovered actually I had an inner child within me who was the driving force of my life, right up until I would say 2 years ago.
Well, I mean,
I have
I can
kids,
say that too.
right?
We all
Yeah.
struggle with it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
2 years ago, what was your point? How did it happen for you? Like, I'm throwing you into the driver's seat here, Fadwa.
Well, for me, 2 years ago, it was that journey through transformation, right? I'm going on a self discovery, finding out who I am and what I'm all about and what my purpose is. And at that time, I was already in the journey, right? And then the transformation for me to know who my inner child is and this inner child is still lives on in me was I was looking at the traces, the tracing back to my childhood. And I was like, everything that I was experiencing, my pain, my anger, my resentment, my frustration, traced back to my inner child. But I did
Mm.
not know the power it had on me until a year ago. Until a year ago. So within that year, I was just going through that journey of figuring out who is this inner child, who is this person coming out back and back and forth, coming back into my life. Why is this person still following me? And it took me a year going through that and understanding that. And then it's been a year now that I'm looking and I'm like, wow, that inner child lived in me, and this inner child controlled half, actually not even half, most of my life, was in my driver's seat of my own life. And there was that gap between myself and that inner child. And it was up to me to connect to that inner child. The resentment, the anger, everything else, I had to bring it back. I had to not erase it, but embrace it, grow from it, learn from it, and show that inner child, you're not alone anymore. I am here with you every step of the way.
Wow. And I love the way that you said that too, because I often use the word bridge and you use the word gap, right? And it's almost like that separation is formed
Mhm.
between our inner child and our present self. And unless your attention bridges the gap, then it doesn't make that connection. It doesn't get to integrate. And that's so powerful. And you obviously were led there on a transformative experience. You wanted to have your attention directed there. Some people are led on this journey because there's so much trauma that wants connection, that it's like you described, it's like pulling on your sleeve, like mom, 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 mom. Except in this case, it's not your kid, it's
Yeah.
your inner child going, fadwa, 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 you're not listening, you're not listening. You're like, damn, what's all this noise about, right? And all of a sudden you realize, holy cow, there is something inside of me that's been trying to catch my attention. And now that my attention is the bridge to connect it
Mhm.
between myself now and myself then myself then doesn't feel so alone. It doesn't feel so unempowered and helpless. It knows it has somebody there who loves it and cares about it more than anybody ever could, right? Because in general, in our world, it's no it's no easy feat to trust somebody,
Mhm.
but there's always a potential that that person is thinking something very different and doesn't have your best interest in mind. But you, like your present self, going back to your past self, there is no doubt in its mind. There is at first, because it takes practice to trust it. I shouldn't say that. But
Yes.
you are the only one who could possibly understand,
Hmm.
right? You are the only one who could possibly understand them. And therefore, you showing them that love and understanding as soon as they actually trust you
Hmm.
is the most powerful
Hmm.
connection that you'll ever have. Because as a friend, as a best friend, that's a best friend you have forever. And that's a best friend you can always lean up against. And they're not thinking something different or have another goal in mind. You guys are thinking together as one. And that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And it takes, it does, you don't have to be courageous enough to go through that journey. It's just allowing yourself and giving yourself that permission to just experiment with it. Just experiment with it and see where that journey takes you, because that's where I find healing also takes place. When you bridge that gap, right, and you connect back to yourself, that's when healing starts.
Yes, and transformational healing.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, I was in a meditation, and I know in my soul at the time I'm in right now, I know that I need to step out of this old pattern. And this is an old pattern from my past experience of life that said I needed to live life a certain way and it needed to look like this. And, not surprisingly, it was exactly the way that my mom had lived. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I just thought that that was the way I was supposed to live because that's all I saw. And so that's what I was trying to emulate, even though I'm not my mom. I'm not like anybody else who's ever existed in the whole world. I need to honor me. But it was so deeply ingrained that
Mhm.
I was like, okay, what part of me really needs to be accessed in order for me to recognize that it's okay for me to choose my own path.
Mhm.
And in that case yesterday, it was a 10-year-old self that saw this reality that my mom had and went, "Oh, this is what I want. This is what I need and this is what I have to do
Yeah.
because this is what works."
Mhm.
And having to go back to her and say, "I see what you're seeing and you're right. That works and it looks really good and it feels good and I completely understand why you'd love it and be pulled towards it. So look at all the parts that you like about it and
Mhm.
how they feel in you and know that I'm here with you
Mhm.
to help you to embrace all those things, but also to know that you have to go with what's true for you as well." And then it told me to make this little reminder, like a talisman of sorts, so that when I touch it and feel it, that I remember, oh, yeah, right. This isn't just about that experience, which was super safe and loving, and it created an entire dream for me to step into, but also to honor that it wasn't my dream necessarily, and that I have to honor my dream as well.
Mhm.
And so that was just yesterday, and but that's the power of connecting to those parts that are otherwise frozen in time, playing a certain reality that says it has to look like this because this is what I always wanted, and reconnecting to go, yeah, but here we are now and look, we can work together.
Mhm.
And there's so much power and potential in that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And our inner child is not there to hold us back. I think our inner child is there to just protect us. It's that
Hmm.
it gets fragile or vulnerable. So the best way to do it is just to protect us. Yeah, just stay in the
Yeah.
cocoon and frozen in time, and it's painful or it's not safe to go out there. So in its own way of understanding things, the inner child just wants to protect itself. And
Yeah.
if we go back there, and just break those layers and say, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to feel these emotions, it's okay, and you will be okay, and we will be okay. I know somebody who's listening to this, they'll think these are two women crazy talking about this.
Some people will, for sure. And other people will go, whoa.
Yes, and I just want to say each one of you has that in you. Each one of you has that inner child. Believe me, we are not the only special ones. Each one of you is special, and each one of you has that inner child in you. You just have to go back and look at all the evidence pointing out to your childhood, and you will see.
Well, and as you say that, I think that's a really great leeway into an exercise that you can do for yourself. And that is that if you're really challenged with something, that you can go, oh, this is really challenging. We all have these, and say, what part of me or what part of me as a child felt this way, right?
Mm,
Or what is this feeling? And as a kid, where did I have this feeling? And then that's the you that you tune into. And you do have to know when you're playing with inner children that just like kids, they don't necessarily make sense.
mhm,
So when you ask for that and you go, oh, that's weird. That's a memory of me like tying my shoelaces on the steps at my old house growing up. Well, I don't know why that's there. You can't try to make sense of it. You have to just tune in to that time and place, however that pulled your attention to it, and just be there to listen. Because just like any other situation, if you try to express or impose your own expectation or judgment on the situation,
Mm-hmm.
no connection can be made.
Yeah.
Only when you're listening can actually that bridge be made where you're able to go, oh my gosh, in that moment, I I didn't look frustrated, but I remember in that moment I was wondering what was going on with my parents and how confusing it was, and that I couldn't tie my shoes at the same time, and it was like there was an explosion happening in my head. And just being there as the kid and as you, to just recognize you're listening to each other and that you're there. And that's like the first, but also the most poignant step in the whole situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I love this. I can talk about inner child all day, all night.
We promise it won't be that long, you guys.
It won't be that long, but it's one of those topics that, it just brings you joy. It just brings you joy because to know that you are never alone every step of the way, that you had something in you all this time, holding you, reminding you, igniting something in you, and reminding you of who you can be, or even your pain, right? Depending on where you are. I just want to go back to a time and a place where we tend to remember the fond memories. You can actually smell the fragrance of, if it was food, or the smell of a perfume, or if it's the flower or the weather, right? We remember all the fond memories. And that's the inner child. They remember there's something happened for that inner child to keep that memory. But the memory is not the smell or the fragrance of the perfume. There must have been an experience with that reminds you, maybe that experience of joy, of fulfillment, of, love. And we remember that. And then when there's something to do with pain, then there's another emotion that comes with it, right? So just go back to that. Go back to when you remember a certain thing. You could be going at a supermarket. How many times this has happened? I'll be at a supermarket and I'll hear music, an old school, and I will freeze. I'll just stand there and I'll be like, oh. But then there'll be a song, you know, a beautiful love song, romantic song that will sing, and you freeze and you're like, I can't believe they are playing this. Why? Because it took you at a time and place that you got hurt. Maybe your heart was broken, right? So we have all these things that will bring memories, and painful or not, it's there. And it's you bridging that gap with that inner child in you.
Yes, and I mean that example of music and smells, right? Like our auditory system of hearing things, our olfactory bulb, which is a direct extension of our brain. So any smells are direct extensions. And as you alluded to there, every single experience that we have, we associate with other things. So the more senses are incorporated, the more you can be present in it. And that could be traumatic or wonderful and in awe. And so, like you said, some of our most base experiences, because they're foundational from when we were kids, will hold the like I would say like the densest like adhesions, right? It'll be stuck. So it could be a really wonderful memory. Like for me, there's a smell of apple pie in the oven at my grandma's house, and there's also the sound of country music, and those two, like they are like ingrained together, right? So when as soon as I smell apple pie, my brain goes to country music and I'm back at the old farmhouse. And we could do the same thing when it comes to having an experience where we thought we were loved and we trusted somebody, and it got adhered to being betrayed. And so love and betrayal are one and the same because they're associated with one another. So we have to remember that our brain links things. And so even when we're going back and connecting to the inner child or to an old experience that you were having as a 25-year-old, right? A kid is any time after like this moment is one of your inner children, right? So don't think it's only from when you're a small kid, but the small kid usually will have some pretty foundational patterns that they're holding on to,
Mm.
right? But if you can go back and actually be in that experience, so go, wow, what was the sound that I was hearing? What are the smells? What was I smelling? The taste in my mouth. What were what was I seeing at the time? Like how did I perceive this experience? The more sensory you can step into, the more you can fully be present, the more you can gain a little bit more of an understanding and an insight
Yeah.
into what the experience was. It's like you're unpacking it. You're undoing that freeze-dried Ziploc bag and letting air in for the experience to be noticed. And as soon as you're there from the present, that reality is future, right? From the present, you're there to bridge that, then it's able to breathe in a whole different way. It can't be vacuum sealed the same way
Yeah.
because your attention is that magical tool that is already poking holes in it to let it see itself differently. Just like every memory, when they say that when you go to a memory, you've already changed it because you visited it from a new perspective, and
Mhm.
that shifts it. And so it can continually shift each and every time you visit it.
Yes, yes. And we can change that, right? We can change that reality. And
Completely.
from pain to something that is you're able to recreate something else, right? So we all have that. We all have that. And we can only change and transform if we make peace, when we make peace with our past. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, our
Yes.
past will keep haunting us. It will never let go of us. And that's our inner child will keep pulling you, just like your little child, mommy, mommy. That little inner child will keep pulling you. Yes.
And I love that when I use that one all the time. It's just like, mom, 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 mom. And we think sometimes like our inner child must be trying to sabotage us.
Hmm.
But just like a kid, they're not trying to sabotage you. They're trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to the body, which is my sacred playground, uh, the body is trying to catch your attention as well,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes it's trying to catch your attention because the inner child is using the body to pull on like a rope, right?
Hmm.
To try to get you to be aware of something, and nothing else is working. So it's
Hmm.
creating pain because it knows you'll listen to pain.
Yeah.
But it's still just another way of catching your attention because your attention is the most valuable commodity your body could possibly have, your entire being could possibly get.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just we're going to be wrapping up soon. I just wanted to give a few words to our listeners. What are the last couple of things that you want to share with our audience?
Ooh, always a good question, Fadwa. I'll try to be quick.
Mhm.
When it comes to being a kid, we and seeing our kids, we're amazed and inspired by their awe and wonder. The way a child sees the world, they're
Mhm.
truly seeing it from a clear perspective that that is helping them learn and engage with their environment. So remembering that as a child, the only perspective we could gain was from the place that we were in at that time,
Mhm.
by our parents, by our environment, by our family, by that experience of our world was all we had. And so if we can imagine that we're continuously uh, almost it's like we're distributing our new information and wisdom and knowledge, and we're sharing it with our past self every time we tune in to our inner child. Any time we recognize, oh, wow, I'm feeling that way. Oh, okay, there's a part of me from the past that's caught in that. I'm going to go back and visit them. You're bringing and sharing that wealth, that richness of information and wisdom that you now have into that experience that they couldn't possibly have. So it's your way of sharing love with yourself from the past. And we can equally, I won't get into it, but we can equally do that from the future as well.
Mhm.
And let our future self talk to us to share that because it's all a part of the same loop. It's a continuum, and we have to get out of thinking that because it happened back there, that it's stuck there. We can visit it and shift it with our attention, and you can do that. And once you do, once you start, even just the thought of doing it, all of those past selves, all of those kids are there. It's like you're a team. You'll be calling yourself we instead of I.
Mhm. Yes, I love that. Yes, yeah, no, that's very good tips actually, and I hope our audience will be able to just take, even if it's just one nugget or one gem. And this show is about the gems of life, and you have the biggest gems right now, and that is the evidence going back into your inner childhood. Your inner childhood has given you so much strength that you're not even aware of it, and it's revisiting that and actually making peace with that. There's a reason why that inner child is pulling you back, and there's a reason why that inner child is pushing you. So it's for you to figure that out. Go back and check and look at the evidence and have that conversation. Actually, have that conversation. I've done that. I have done that. I've been in conversation with my inner child where at times we have that tag of war. And then there are times we just like, yes, you go. You did an amazing work. Thank you for being there. So have that conversation and tune in to your inner you, because that's who you are. Well, Jules, as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Fadwa. It's always amazing driving this awesome gem of life car with you.
Yes, we all have a purpose, and we all have a purpose in this life. And the purpose of this show is for me and to you, is to aspire to inspire.
Inspire.
How to inspire. So that is my role here. I aspire to inspire. What is your role? Well, till then, thank you and connect to your inner child. Have a
Thanks,
good
guys.